Curtains have opened up the auditorium to usher the performance of Pabulum. Spotlight shines overhead. Director raises their thumb. If everybody's comfortable, I'd like to welcome you to the show. Thank you for waiting. Tune our and wine. Feast your imagination on what you find. What will you find? Paz Pabulum.
Paz Pabulum.
Paz Pabulum. Paz Pabulum. Quai quai ba men kai kai quai jian kai kai wo yao xin lai bu kai wo bu kai mama wei lai she lai ye bu kai ni hao. Do you know what that song means? It means, I'm a fucking rabbit, I am gonna rape you, go down to your insides, use pancones to gape you. No, rabbit, do not rape, pancones make my ass bleed, raping's not a nice deed. So, you know, we got off to a fucking phenomenal start last week, didn't we? I've seen nothing but 5-star reviews, 0 complaints. But I'd honestly like to get the length of the episodes down to like an hour or so if I can, because I know you're busy, you have your own ambitions in life, don't want to take too much time away from you. You know, you must be productive. I demand a fan base of winners. So, you know, you must make me and your fathers proud of you. So I feel an hour, maybe an hour and a half, that's like a reasonable commitment to ask of each other each week. But, you know, expect me to fail in this task in the next few episodes. It is still early days still. I'm still getting the hand of all this podcast malarkey. It's mad because you'll sit down to record something and be like, oh, it's only going to take 5 minutes. And then you look, it's like, oh shit, it's fucking 20 minutes already. You know, it just goes by so quick. So, going to have to learn how to be more economical with my language, I think. More efficient in my storytelling. But eventually the goal is to get them down to like an hour or so. So with this in mind, when I was thinking about doing an episode on China and my travels there, I thought that instead of telling you all the highlights of the trips and just like an overall verdict as I was originally planning on doing, I may as well just shorten it and then split it into 4 episodes. You know, I've been to China 4 times, so I just thought I should try and remember as much as I can about each trip. And then have like little autobiographical episodes, sprinkle some of my musings throughout, you know what I mean? Just do an episode for each trip. And I'm sure I'll forget to tell y'all some things, so there's a possibility you have to do like an additional China episode in the future, maybe, a little bonus ep. But you should also know I'm actually recovering from being sick right now. So I'm extra nasally this episode. So please do forgive any cough or sniffle you might hear throughout this. You know, we'll soldier through. And I hope this can be interesting, you know, to people that have been to China. To those that never have, even Chinese people themselves, you know. But China's a vast place, and I'm by no means an oracle. You know, this is by no means meant to be a comprehensive like guide to the wonders of the country. This is merely just me recounting my experiences and thoughts while I was there. You know, I'm well aware I've only seen a fraction of the country, and I hope none of these recordings get me fucking banned. You know, because I'd love to visit again someday. There's so much I want to see, and I don't intend on doing a John Cena ever, but I should apologise in advance for any crime I may have committed in your country. You know, I was young and I was quasi-spastic. And I would sincerely like to say that, I do hold a special place in my heart for China. A lot of great experiences there. Hold a special place for the Chinese people. So no matter the inevitable propaganda that's going to come from our countries in the coming years, that'll never change. And I'm well aware of any actions of individuals can never, be a fair representation of a collective, especially when you're fucking billions of people. So, with that in mind, do also be aware that everything you're about to hear may well just be the ramblings of a madman. So, when I turned 16, my mum got a job teaching English in China in a city next to Beijing called Tianjin. And I know this shouldn't be surprising to most people listening, but if you have children, it isn't the best thing to flee to a foreign country when they're 16. There's a philosophy that goes around where some parents think at some arbitrary age, whether it be 16, 18, 21, that they can just stop being a parent. This is a terrible idea. I've never witnessed this not result in disaster. But at the time you don't give a fuck because you just think, well, who cares? Free house, more parties. But of course, it's going to have a psychological impact. So if you're a parent, you must be the parent until the day you die. You must never think it's okay to retire and abandon them at any point. That's my advice. But in my mum's case, when I turned 16, she went, "Fuck it, ciao," and fucking went to China. I was forgiven though. Anyway, after a few months, my mum was allowed to bring someone to visit her. And the school paid for a free trip or something, and as all my brothers, I was elected. And I'd never been outside of Europe before, and up till that point, I kind of assumed England was the world. Even though I'd seen globes before, that's all the rest of the world was, places on a globe. But when I arrived in China, I quickly realised, oh shit, this is the world. The razzmatazz was instantaneous. And I saw thousands of people cram into buses like they were sardines, Every road was the size of a motorway in my country, and they were all full of cars as far as the eye could see. And I'd look up at buildings and feel like my neck was being fucking guillotined by gravity. Because I would struggle to see the tips of them. And I realised, oh, I'm an ant. What a plot twist. I'd arrived in winter sometime in January, and it was freezing. The temperature would have given Wim Hof a nipple on. Rhino sack at the minimum, and every time you open the taxi door, you'd get a little electric shock or little fucking zap, a little buzz Lightyear. And then when you took a jumper off, you'd hear the static crackle, you know what I mean? And sometimes it felt as though I'd travelled back in time. In some places, because everyone seemed to be smoking everywhere, but people were smoking in bars, on buses, children were smoking. It wasn't uncommon to see someone taking a piss in the street either. In fact, one time, and this image really encapsulates China for me, is I saw a dad taking a son for a piss in the middle of the street, and he was holding his son's dick in one hand, and in the same hand he was also holding two lit cigarettes. Yeah, that pretty much sums it up. They ate every part of the animal, and nothing would go to waste. Brain, eyeball, tongue. You couldn't flush toilet paper down the toilet, or drink water from a tap. You had to buy bottled water, and sometimes the toilet was just a hole in the ground as well. People would go shopping for designer goods at midnight, and it felt honestly it was safer there at midnight than it was where I was from in the daytime. I see people burning their money in the streets for their ancestors. Next to them, about 20 grandmothers dancing like they're dodging bullets in the Matrix. Next to them, some quails just chilling on a stick. I hear the sound of an ahu reverberate through my soul for the first time when I heard it. It felt like a tether to the sounds of China's ancient past. And then I hear the true soundtrack of China. Wherever you go, fucking behind every footstep you take. You know what I mean? I thought, oh fuck, I've never heard that in Chinatown before. And Liverpool actually claims to have the oldest Chinese community in Europe, but I'm not sure I believe it. To be honest, like the Chinese were in contact with the Romans, and it's not just Western Europe. They claim like all of Europe. Doesn't seem very likely. Also, every Chinese person I tell that to, they don't seem very convinced. But anyway, that's the claim. Maybe it's true. I was just blown away by all this. I was wide-eyed in China. Not to be racial here. This is a whole new world. This was the actual world, a third of the planet, and they were all speaking this alien language. I had no fucking clue what anyone was saying, and I wouldn't have even known where to begin to start deciphering it. And like, I literally may as well have just been an alien on a different planet. And this whole experience by itself was like as mind-blowing as any psychedelic. It's just completely unforgettable and life-changing just to witness that. And then on my first full day, my mum wanted to take me to work with her after school. It was an international school, and I was just going to chill in the staff room. And this character walks in, James Dean, which will either make you think of the 1950s Hollywood actor or the Jewish porn actor, depending on how degenerate your upbringing's been. And he's pretty much hated by all the teachers there, because he had like a reputation of like burning bridges, being this wild drunk. But he was a favourite. He was a favourite teacher of all the kids in the school, and he'd been adopted himself as a kid, so had all the deficiencies and fucking wackiness you'd expect from to come along with such trauma and tragedy. It was clear he was wrestling with a lot of unresolved issues, and it would come out when he was inebriated. But despite any flaw he may have had, he was like erudite, funny, creative, intelligent, always just a laugh to be around, and the go-to conspiracy guy. And he looked the fucking spitting image of Sue Perkins. If Sue Perkins had a goatee. And he said, I hear you play guitar, Pab. I'm off for the first couple of lessons today. Do you want to come to mine and get my guitar with me? So I was like, yeah, son. And we got to his place, and he pulled out a fat bag of weed, and just goes, "Do you smoke grass?" So we had to just fucking chong and like copious amounts of weed. He's on keyboard, I'm on guitar. We're just jamming the morn away. But we lose track of time and have to rush back to school because James is supposed to teach a class. Then, just before the pupils enter the class, he says, hey, do you want to teach my class for me? And I just think he's like joking, so I say, yeah. And then a bunch of year 8s walk into the class, and he just goes, yeah, go on then. And in my head, I'm just thinking, I'm baked as a snake. But I soldier through and decided to teach them a class on lyric writing. Those kids have no fucking clue how lucky they were, experiencing a master class from myself. So I just explained to them, different genres of music, how the lyrics differ, whether similar. Basically, the common threads, rhyme. And I said they should pick their own favourite genre of music. Then we'll write lyrics in those style, in the style of whatever they choose. And I remember there's one kid from Spain, and he goes, you better lose yourself in the moment you want it. You better never let it go. You've only got one shot. And I said, bitch, do you think I don't know who fucking Eminem is? There's like 4 years between us. You know what I mean? I dressed him down thoroughly. I was when there was a Russian girl, and she had her favourite genre was death metal, so that's a red flag. I mean, literally, fucking in the old Leningrad there. And she starts going, rain, rain, go away. Because of you, the pain will stay. Slit my wrists and slit my throat. Death is the only antidote. Yeah, I had the giggles so bad and it was so hard to contain my laughter. She just told the most fucking like morbid tale you could ever imagine. You know, rain clouds began to manifest above the school. If Marilyn Manson was in the room, he would have said, yo, this bitch is a fucking buzzkill. You know what I mean? Edgar Allan Poe shit his coughing. But we just gave her a standing ovation. I was like, yeah, that was fucking phenomenal. You know, get her a Pulitzer Prize. You know, when me and James bonded a little bit that day, I got to all the other teachers, which, let's be honest, were mostly degenerates. You know, they all either had super shady background stories, like they'd moved after being in a witness protection program, or they were in the business of acquiring and spreading STDs to one another, you know. And I know I was canoodled with a couple myself. But in China, they were highly sought after, you know, native speakers, irregardless of credentials. The only place where white privilege actually exists is China. Well, at least 10 years ago. I'm pretty sure it's changed now. But I remember like being in a shopping centre and looking up at a billboard, and it was just a super average white guy that was like a Calvin Klein model, like just a 45-year-old geography teacher, some Unabomber looking motherfucker. Just fucking someone was just saying to him like, oh, you're white, you want to be a model? You know, you just see it all the time, just random part-time teachers on billboards as models, looking debonair with a pot belly and a three-piece. There's just a bunch of random jobs given to foreign people. Like I had a friend that used to get paid to drink at a bar, a Jewess called Axel from Montpellier, and you know, she wasn't a prostitute or anything. The bar just saw it as a sign of prestige to have a foreigner drinking at that bar, so they'd pay for her to drink there for like 5 hours. And also, but with the teacher one, I don't mind actually. You know, I mean, as someone who left school at 16, nothing that requires credentials or qualifications will ever work in my favour. But I'm also more than capable of teaching somebody, especially English. I come from a long line of teachers. I've been around a lot of teachers in the general population of my country. So I know that I'm in the elite group of people that can be regarded as fluent in the English language. This isn't just lip service. I've actually taught before, so I can verify that I am more proficient than a lot of the so-called qualified teachers. I'm also a poet, so when you think about it, it's kind of like a pursuit of, sometimes even like a peacocking of, mastery over the language itself. So it's like I'm unfamiliar with the language. I'm a native, but I also work with it every day. But if I wanted to be a teacher, I don't, but if I did, I would need a qualification, so it would never be picked. They'd opt for a semi-literate pillhead fresh out of uni with an Antifa butt plug, you know, because they paid for a TEFL course online and can somehow prove they're not going to finger the kid or something. But, whereas I'm a risk that most countries don't want to take, you know. Take a chance, 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 you know, you can take a chance on me. That's what I would do. But if I had a kid that I wanted to learn Chinese and someone told me, hey, there's a Dutch guy here that studied for a couple of years in uni, I would tell them to get fucked. I want an OG Chinaman. You know, I wouldn't care if they were qualified as a teacher or not. In fact, I think that native tutors that come from outside the system are better than ones that come from within, because they don't just regurgitate rigid conversations from textbooks. They're willing to introduce slang. They know more about dialects and cultures than a non-native speaker. I could list 1,000 more reasons. Point is, although it's changed now and you'll need like a Celt or a TEFL or whatever, back then in China it was the Wild West. Well, Wild East. And if you were white, someone would say, ahoy there, my vanilla brethren, would you like to be a teacher? And you just shake that magnolia badonkadonk down to the chalkboard, because if you can do the job, that's all that should matter. You know, and I agree with that anyway. But you could also go for a meal or something, and 10 people would just surround you and ask to take pictures. They were always offering me beer and cigarettes. It was like being a celebrity. because they'd never seen a white person before. It actually made me realise the true nature of immigration too, which is the less immigrants there are, the better that is when you're an immigrant. That's why you can find examples in history like John Blank, who's a black man that was made a trumpet player to the Tudor kings in the 16th century. Or even in my city again, where start saying the word la. This is a word we say to each other in Liverpool. Yes, la. Your ma's tits are fucking huge, la. That's not me ma, that's me dad. What, la? That's a Chinese word. And Scousers just incorporated it into our colloquial slang. Because when there's a very small number of immigrants, people are truly fascinated and enamoured by them. Everything they do and say is cool. There's a real cultural exchange where, people start to wear their clothes and shit. Translate the folk tales. They're seen as being exotic. There are a hell of a lot more immigrants in my country now. And I can guarantee nobody has any interest in doing this. If someone uses a word from an immigrant, they're taking the piss. They're being ironic, or if they were being sincere, they would be looked at like they're a fucking weirdo. You know what I mean? The immigrant might even start crying, "That's cultural appropriation." And that's what happens. After first being accepted, more will come, and people just become indifferent. They couldn't give any less of a shit. Then in the final stage, the immigrants become overrepresented in crime, positions of power, affluence and influence, all volatile combinations when you've been playing the game of collectivism. And the indigenous population realises life's not good for them, and it's not going to get any better. Then finally the minorities just get scapegoated, fucking sometimes expelled, like the Indians by Idi Amin in Uganda. But actually, what history records as being scapegoating of people, 95% of the time isn't really scapegoating. It would be more accurate to say it's the retaliatory collectivising against the collectivisation of minorities. The propaganda used against the immigrants is never fabricated. It really is happening, really is a problem. I can show you 1,000 crimes from immigrants and none of them are CGI, Even Jews in Weimar Germany before the Nazis came to power, they were overrepresented in certain positions of power and influence. Crime also, that's a provable fact. It's not a lie. This is just the nature of immigration itself, regardless of what country or race is involved. And I'm certainly not a racialist, I'm not even a collectivist. I think you should treat people as individuals and could address problems on a case-by-case basis. But it's still undeniable that by every measurable metric, the quality of life did improve for the indigenous population in the years before the war. Astronomically so. So, there actually was a problem and they addressed it. Albeit in a ruthless manner through the collectivisation and they prospered. It's it's a taboo talking point, but once upon a time, Germany had a space station. So, we're scapegoating is more the shithousery of a government to capitalise on either people's stupidity or cowardice, to pin the blame on a group of people for their own shortcomings or incompetence or overreach. Blaming draconian government measures on the unvaccinated, for example. No, it's your draconian globalist government, no one else. So you want to know about scapegoating, that's it. And it was, speaking of scapegoating the Germans, I actually remember one night on this trip, and I went to a bar and I witnessed a fight in a place called AJ's Sports Bar. And it was my first night out alone. I was with some teachers, and randomly, maybe 10 or 15 Chinese guys came into the bar, and they pointed at some Germans, and a brawl just ensued. And I'm not being racist here, but at one point, I swear down this happened, one of them legitimately just did a flying kick over a table. It was wild. A TV got smashed on this German guy's head. And in my drunken teenage folly, I decided to walk up to one of the Chinese gentlemen mid-skirmish and inquire what it was all about. And he said, "Oh well, they attacked my cousin, so we came to avenge him." So I said, okay, fair enough. But after the Chinese guys fled the scene, I went up to the German guy that got a TV smashed on him, and asked him if he attacked his cousin, and he went, "No, what the fuck? I just arrived here today. I don't know what's happening." So very possible the friendly Chinese man was fibbing, tell a little fib and Archie, but it was at least honourable of him to leave me unscathed. But then the petrified boomer teachers I was with said it was a national holiday and they were nationalists and they were randomly beating up foreigners. And I was completely blue-pilled on nationalism at the time, trying to fight globalism with globalism, But what I realise now is that this wasn't nationalism at all. This was xenophobic hooliganism, which is what we have in this country also. But that isn't nationalism. It's actually the opposite. It's what I call platitudinal patriotism, which can only come about through being run by globalists, through being deprived of your culture, where the only acceptable forms of support for your nation have been spoon-fed to you by the establishment, and usually reduced into, bite-sized slogans of 3 words: fly the flag, support the troops, trust the government, take the knee, Black Lives Matter, smash the fash. And why could you live it long with the same fucking thing? Like, protect the NHS, God save the Queen, 3 lines on the shirt. Just things that anyone from anywhere in any period of time can regurgitate and then claim to be a patriot. They're just as British as you fucking bigot. Despite not having next to nothing to do with our actual culture. Here, you could quite reasonably call it Americanization, actually. Don't know if you ever heard the other 3-word slogan pushed, New World Order. You're talking to a man here that's seen every David Icke lecture, so I'm pretty familiar with this phrase. But actually, it's not the New World Order, it's the New World Order. So if you're from the so-called Old World, like over here in Europe, you can just look at America like it's a time machine. They're going to rewrite your history, make you hate your ancestors that actually built the country, tell you your country was built by immigrants, the whole melting pot myth, which is absolutely a myth, by the way. Then the only acceptable nationalism isn't nationalism at all. It's platitudinal patriotism, so that anyone can be a part of it. I know a Canadian guy that lived in Canada till he was like 45. Then moved to America for around 10 years and now says shit like, "We Americans." I don't know if anyone from the New World can comprehend how fucking bizarre that is in the eyes of an Englishman. It's utter lunacy. We can look at that from afar and say, "No, thank you. We don't want that here. It's not our cup of tea." But when we've been deprived of our culture, in the vacuum of culturelessness, 4 things arise to fill its place: Islamization, Judaization, globalization, which is just communism, and Americanization, which you could also just call hypercapitalism. And all of those things may converge at some points, but all of them are fine with platitudinal patriotism, because the second we reassert our actual culture, none of them can possibly exist. The second we say that what our culture actually consists of is understanding the importance of absolute free speech to safeguard against tyranny, that we must have the right to absolute free speech enshrined in a codified constitution, that all so-called hate speech laws must be abolished, no matter how fucking much you infantilize minorities, no matter how offended you feel or how neurotic you are. This is the very core of our culture. And those that stand in the way are guilty of treason. You stop globalism altogether. There can be no one world communist government at that point. This is why you won't hear the platitudinal patriot football hooligans shout about it on your globalist front news. Not anything else that's actually our culture. That we have the right to bear arms for the explicit purpose of not only self-defense, but safeguarding our compatriots from tyranny. that we're absolutely opposed to the barbaric practice of circumcision, because it is child abuse, it is mutilation, it is the highest form of blasphemy to all religions, despite the mental acrobatics its deluded victims try to perform. And fuck me, are they deluded? You're just jealous because women think it's more beautiful. Yeah, I'm sure women gather just to gossip about how delicious your impetigo scars look. Fucking tritone Tyrone over here. It's cleaner. Yeah, and Abu Hamza is a pioneer in hand sanitation too. Listen, sweetie, I'm going to give it to you straight. You're an amputee. Lose the arrogance. You know, the punishment our ancestors would dish out for this crime was death or banishment. Expulsion. What? The travel brochure didn't tell you this was a part of our culture? Well, welcome to England, bitch. I think it's high time you were anglicised, you know. Our ancestors revered this part of the body. They understood its significance, its functions, its beauty, that this practice is mutilation, and they called it such. And I'm personally fine with the death penalty or banishment, but we must at the very least make it illegal. You know what? I'm feeling generous. We can just have an age of consent. Because whether we make it illegal or have an age of consent, the result is exactly the fucking same. This is the elephant in the room that I know and you know and they know, which is that the numbers will dwindle to zero because it's a child abuse cult. And this is the same reason they'll oppose having an age of consent. I also think that we must compensate any indigenous man that's been duped into mutilation, and not by the public purse, but by the exact individuals that fucking mutilated them, by the subverters, the circumcised doctors trying to up their numbers, the treasonous and corrupt snake oil surgeons, the stiflers of medicine, the nurses that betrayed their nation, that lacked the bravery to refuse to participate in this alien blood sacrifice, this satanic surgery of the desert, because, you know, we need to bring accountability back. And any amputee that doesn't accept this deal of compensation and a restoration, that refuses to repent, must be castrated because they're a danger to children. It's giving them brain damage, and they're going to do everything they can to draw blood from a child. You know, our ancestors were well aware of this. They understood the brain damage it causes. You know, not only does it render them outcasts of logic and reason, a lifetime spent being a nemesis of nature, it's a parasitic practice. They will subvert and lie and proselytise and propagandise by any means necessary because they're incapable of having a live and let live attitude. You know, you can see that by looking at America or Korea, even Japan now, any other place that's spitting on the graves of their ancestors. If you have a live and let live attitude, it doesn't spread at all. You know, you don't go to Africa and tell people, hey, you're going to die of AIDS, this is why you have AIDS. It's because you're not fucking cutting off your baby's dick. That doesn't happen. You know, that doesn't happen at all if you have a live and let live attitude. And make no mistake, spitting on the graves of their ancestors are exactly what those places are doing. And once you dupe a nation into this, it can be generations before they break free from the cult. You know, a nation isn't an uncircumcised nation by happenstance. It's because our ancestors actively and vehemently opposed it, as we should too, as we must. You know, this isn't a high-tech advancement that's come about in the last 30 years. This barbarism has existed for thousands of years and has always been run on the same blueprint of bullshit. Read what our Roman ancestors had to say about this. Not only will they tell you everything I did just now, but they would also roast the shit out of them. You know, this is an intrinsic part of our culture. When a mutilated man tries to spout their delusions, roast him mercilessly. And of course they'll play the victim because, this is the vaginal mind we're dealing with here. Always the victim, forever in the now. And they'll say, why can't you just live and let live? Try and make out like this is some kind of right. Don't fall for it. This is child abuse. It will never be righteous to defend child abuse. Don't look the other way when it's child abuse. This so-called right is to draw blood from a child or baby. Don't lose sight of that. It will never be righteous. It will always be child abuse. You either have a circumcised society or you have a civilized society. You can't have both. And everything they have to say about it is entirely predicated upon us, men that have lived lives with natural penises as God actually intended, saying nothing about it. Because no mutilated man knows what it's like to have a natural, functioning human penis. So they can't tell you how significant or insignificant it is, or how pleasurable it is for us or our women, how hygienic, how useful, whatever. They don't know. So when they have the audacity to try and speak on our behalf, it's your duty to burst a bubble of delusion, to speak up and let them and the world know 100% of what they say is bullshit. Which exposes the reality that this is just a frivolous amputation of a human body part. That their parents were dumb enough to believe something that wasn't convincing to anyone before there was even a single century Anno Domini. It doesn't matter how much they try and fucking fetishize it or desensitize people to it through porn. How much they subvert with pseudoscience or TV or Hollywood, which do all those things, or how many celebrities they pay to endorse it. The truth will always be the truth, and the truth is our very existence can debunk any claim they try to make. The vast majority of the planet, which we are, can drop a big fat truth bomb on them at any point by just smiling and letting them know, hey, you've been deprived of the best part. Without a doubt. So when they attempt to propagate their archonic inversions of reality, you must swiftly remind them there's a good reason why fucking Michelangelo, D. David. Alas, the football hooligan doesn't say any of that, He doesn't say anything about any aspect of our culture. Marriage being the focal point of the family being the focal point of a society. So we must return to a diet that prioritises health, or a society that values genius over instead of vacuous celebrities. So we must fight the erasure of our art and history to preserve the legacies of some of the greatest minds the island's ever produced. Byron, Shelley, Donne, Milton, Shakespeare, Spencer, Chaucer. He just throws fucking a chair at some frogs in a restaurant. Doesn't say anything about restoring culture. Fucking makes himself look like a drunken tit. Embarrasses everyone in the nation. Well, it's the same in China. Anyone that's scratched the surface of Chinese history in the 20th century will know that the communists and the nationalists were enemies. If anyone knows anything about communism and nationalism at all, they'll know they're immortal enemies. That's why Taiwan exists. So what the Chinese Communist Party did is hoodwink people into platitudinal patriotism, so that they believe to love the Chinese Communist Party is to love your country and be a nationalist. Despite them being the ones that try to destroy their entire culture and history. It's a whole thing. I don't really want to speak about politics this episode. If anyone is interested, let me know, and I can elaborate in a future episode more like the very nature of communism and why this happens and what it's really all about and everything. But essentially, they're not nationalists. And nationalists will always make an attempt to restore their culture. So they'll just quickly come to the conclusion that half of their constitution is nullified by the Communist Party. Like they have free speech in their constitution, but that's trumped by the inability to criticise the Communist Party. Likewise, if they say, hey, what about us owning land again, or freedom of religion? That's going to be at loggerheads with the plans of the Communist Party. So they only really have two choices. They could not be nationalists, but be platitudinal patriots, like fucking never attempt to restore their culture or question the Communist Party. Be riled up into attacking whatever foreigners their government and media have told them to, and still feel like a sense of pride and be patted on the back by everyone that's flying the flag, which is what happens. Because the other choice they have is say, actually, you know what? Chiang Kai-shek was the true hero of China, and get fucking Tiananmen, you know. So it's either an act of stupidity or cowardice, because there's no attempt to preserve their culture or better the nation. You know, for any country to attack minorities is retarded, and will always be to the detriment of the nation. I actually got red pilled on nationalism a few years later, though, in Chongqing. But I knew nothing of this. I didn't fuck up about anything about culture or nothing. I was a complete simpleton the first time I was there. You know, the things that impressed me were like different flavour Oreos. You know, I'd go to a 7-Eleven and see orange and purple Oreos, and I was like, wow, did I have these in my country? You know, I just cared about different flavours of ice creams mostly. That's the kind of thing that'd blow my mind back then. But you know, but I was there for Chinese New Year. That was mad. I remember the sky was completely lit up by fireworks. You know, the night was completely gone. Nix had moved aside and was just laying there in awe, receiving this fucking bukkake of fire and light. You know, and fireworks are a pretty psychedelic thing too, if you think about it. Tang Dynasty invention, I believe. And what's always fascinated me about them is, does the maker of them know what pattern they're going to make and what colours are going to be where, and like, you know, in like what places and shit? Because it's a little bit less cool if it's just all accidental. But if they said this one's going to make a spiral and have this colour here and there, you know, or from what just looks like a stick, think about how much of a genius that Tang Dynasty inventor was. You know, someone pour out 2 drops of baijiu on his grave. And if any of you happen to make fireworks, do enlighten us all in the comments below. I also went on a little excursion. We were originally supposed to go to a place called Harbin for an ice festival, where all these amazing ice sculptures are made, but we got diverted because something was frozen, I think. I can't remember what. Walt Disney. But something was definitely frozen.
Walt Disney. His head's in a tank.
I think maybe it was the train tracks or something.
It's fucking Walt Disney.
Anyway, we ended up going to Beijing instead. And I saw the Forbidden City when I was there, which, if you don't know, it was like a bunch of palaces that the emperors of the past would live in. And they'd have thousands of concubines brought to them, the pengest women throughout the land. But they'd have their feet bound, so they were crippled and couldn't walk. They would just sit in a room naked. And then when the emperor felt like inseminating one of them, he'd send some eunuchs into a room, because no other man other than the emperor was allowed in, you know, hence the Forbidden City. And they'd just carry her into the emperor's boudoir, you know, which I don't know how you feel about that, but I think it's pretty based. And I went to a park in Beijing too. There's just a random roller coaster. There's a lot in China, just random things you'll find in places you wouldn't expect. And I went on it. It was like a rusty Ferris wheel type thing, and I got stuck when I was at the top. And I thought, oh shit, I'm gonna end up on a wrecked thread on 4chan, you know. But I survived to tell the tale. Honestly, I think most of the time on this first trip, I was in an expat bar by the name of Truman's, and they also have karaoke. It was where I was first introduced to the song Country Roads by John Denver, because all of the Americans were all singing it there. It was run by an Australian man and a woman from Hong Kong, and the bar staff would always be scranning chicken feet at the bar. And I remember one night there towards the end of my stay, I was with James again actually, and we were looking at each other. And his back was like to the door, and 2 men walked in. One had a mustache and a lazy eye. The other had a cowboy hat on. And without skipping a beat, James turned to them as they opened the door and just shouted, "Fags!" You know, and I just couldn't contain my laughter, so I had to feign go to the bathroom and just to burst out laughing. And when I came back out, James was at the bar talking to them about 9/11 being an inside job, and how like Tower 7 fell on its own blueprint. And one of them turned out to be a fundamentalist Christian, and the other was a redneck that had come to China when he was homeless, and he'd been there for like 10 years and had a Chinese wife and kid, and was one of like 3 people to be getting Chinese citizenship, which I think is a good thing, by the way. They don't just hand away citizenship to anyone like my country does right now. You're completely devaluing it. Anyway, they said they were going to check out some bars and ask me to join them. Everyone I was with was like, nah, don't go. You know, there's fucking too many red flags there. But I was just feeling adventurous, you know, because I'd only been out by myself at one time. So I agreed, and we like drove off into the city. And then when we were in the taxi, Cowboy Hat goes, actually, let's make a quick detour first because, you know, I want to get my dancing shoes. Guy goes like, yeah, I wish I had my dancing shoes. You know, and I thought, oh shit, I'm going to get raped. I've never been more convinced I'm going to get raped. Like, fucking dancing shoes. You know, so we get back to the apartment, and I feign go to the bathroom once more, and locking yourself in a bathroom 2 times in a night unnecessarily is a telltale sign you're not in good company. So I started, you know, giving myself a pep talk. You know, there's no sellotape here, can't cover my anus. You're gonna have to go out there swinging, channel your inner Rocky Marciano. You know, so I'm winding up a haymaker. And then when I opened the door, Cowboy Hat's just fucking tied up these sparkling sequined shoes.
My dancing shoes are pretty sweet.
You know what I mean? And I was like, oh, that's sort of a relief. You know, then we ended up going to a place called Apple, which by the way, a Chinese person told me once that if you want to do a Chinese accent, say the word apple when you want to say iPod, and iPod when you want to say apple, and that will give you like the right vibe. Crunchy iPod. Anyway, we entered this nightclub. It was like we'd been transported to Africa. It was this little enclave of Africa with disco lights, because there's quite a few Africans in China actually, and these guys were super cool. I don't drink now, but I did back then, and they were very like welcoming and hospitable. They invited us over to drink with them. They had crates of beers on the table and told us, you know, help yourselves. And then Cowboy Hat fucking like rolled his sleeves up and went straight to the dance floor. I don't even know how I'm going to convey this to you. Like, he was the best dancer I've ever seen. I'm not much of a dance man, but he was phenomenal. You know, at one point he did the splits. And it was a whole new style of dancing that I'd never seen before. It was uniquely his. It was like a cross between Carlton from Fresh Prince of Bel-Air and fucking Beyonce. You know, with a touch of capoeira. And you know, this of course it awakened something in the Africans. They start going, oh, running around like they've been shown a magic trick. Then a dance-off ensues. You know, they start whipping out some tribal chants, summoning spirits via voodoo. Skeletons rose from the dead and started bebopping. At one point, a girl tried to stick a beer coaster in her bottom lip. You know, while over on the D floor, a random kid was just warming his hands by a fire. So I thought, you know, I'm gonna get out of this. This getting out of hand. Better go. So I ended up going to a place called Sitong. And when you walk into Sitong, you're greeted to a growling septuagenarian. Wow. Oh, you look ravenous. You know, talking to a Chinese girl a quarter of his age with a belly full of bouncer, just perched on his knee. Petite, my favourite kind of oriental. Bar wench, torching now. You know, there's a freshly trafficked Russian pole dancer with her tits out working the pole, a bombshell. Just stopping men in their tracks whenever they caught a glimpse of her. A proverbial traffic light. And then a Filipino house band just fucking playing Maroon 5 covers, you know. So this is where I was now. And a Mexican guy called Alex came up to me and he said, hey, my friend wants to buy you a drink, is that okay? and pointed to this beautiful Chinese girl, and I thought, well, that's strange. Her buy me a drink? Surely I'm supposed to buy her a drink. You know, that's how it works in my country. This is the complete opposite. So I said, yeah, sure. And she comes over. I asked her about it, and she goes, well, yeah, I want to show you that I can be a good wife. And I thought, women in my country need to step their game up. You know, what have you done to make yourself good marriage material lately, eh? Harlot. So, we exchanged numbers and agreed to go on a date. I should say, probably at this point too, I'd just been fucking prostitutes the entire time. Don't know if I mentioned that because I didn't think anyone spoke English. The whole time my mum was speaking Chinese, and the way people reacted to me, I just assumed no one spoke English. I thought, well, I've already had sex with 3 girls back home, so I'm not going to, go there and not have sex. That would be preposterous. So every day when my mum went to work, I would just order these dirt cheap prostitutes from escort sites. And that's what I spent most of my days doing, I was pretty exhausted by the end of it, to be honest. My dick was beginning to look like fucking Jasmine the Bambara's leg. I was indulging in the mosquito bites and the juicy mangoes, if you know what I mean. I fucked a gymnast, a girl with a dragon tattoo, fresh from Stieg Larsson's imagination. I also fucked a girl that couldn't say anything but I love you, which was honestly pretty arousing. I couldn't say anything in Chinese at the time either, only like ni hao, xie xie, which is thank you, qing dao, which is the name of a beer, and a ba, which is the number 8. And I only knew that because it was the name of the cigarette I smoked, so I just pointed and say ba. Fucking anyway, I was banging her, and she kept whispering that she loved me repeatedly in my ear.
I love you.
And then one point she started to blowing me, and I still had the condom on, which I don't know if you ever received a blowjob with a condom on before. One of the most depressing experiences you can have in this life as a man. Am I a germ? Is she a germ? It's dystopian. Anyway, the feeling was mutual, and after giving a few amorous kisses and licks to my taint, she took it off and started sucking properly, like a veteran. It gave my balls a few more kisses and then got on top of me.
I love you.
Started riding like a succubus. Then I sat up and changed to a lotus position, and from there, and this is a little Pabulum tip, this, because it's the most underrated sex position there is. From being in the lotus position, you want to flip them so that you're on your sides, but you're also face to face with the legs wrapped around your back. It's tremendous because you can kiss the lips, the neck. They can play with the clit. You can suck on a tit. If anyone knows anything about me, it's that I love a good tit suck. That'll be on my epitaph someday. It's a very easy position to fuck fast and deep too. The angles are favourable. You can put a baseball bat up her ass, or whatever you want. It's just an incredibly convenient position. Anyway, we switched to this position, and eventually I thought like, oh shit, I'm gonna come, like better warn her and pull out. So I told her, and she just starts like squeezing her legs around me tighter, like this fucking cum constrictor. And I'm saying, I'm gonna come, and I'm trying to push her off. She's just persistent all the same.
I love you.
Starts doing this fucking Kegel squeeze, and I'm just stranded in a cock lock. Who taught you that, Jackie Chan? Fucking just motionless. Eventually I broke free. I got some of it on her stomach, but I'm not gonna lie, I ejacked a biblical amount, and most of it was oozing out of her. She's just brimful with my juice, my fucking bubble tea. And we showered, and then she looked outside and went shivered. So I just gave her some money for a taxi. That was the end of it. But sometimes I reflect back on that and wonder if there's a little Pablo Yang out there somewhere. But speaking of which, the owner of Sitong, the nightclub, propositioned me once to have a baby with her. I don't remember whether it was £1 million or £1 million kwai, which is like £100,000. But I said no. But not because I had any morals. I absolutely did, and I would have done it. At the time, I was crazy in my youth. But it's only because I was with a girl at the time, and I didn't want them to think I was a complete fucking scumbag, But yeah, I declined. So anyway, I ended up going on this date, and I'd never been on a date before. And her name was Yuki, and she was a student in Ningbo University that had been on an exchange program to Nottingham before. So, she spoke decent English, and she was like 25. So instinctively, I just went, oh, I'm 21. And that would come back to haunt me. It's one of those lies that just kind of like slips out before you thought about it. And I was like, I don't know why I just said that. Like, I wouldn't have cared if she knew my age, and maybe she wouldn't have cared. But once I'd said it, it's not like at any point you can just tell the truth and go, oh yeah, that was a random lie I decided to tell you just now. You know what I mean? She just think I'm a lunatic, and the date would end prematurely. So, and we were in this place called Helen's, which is like a chain restaurant. Super fake alcohol, buckets of JD and Coke, shisha, and their speciality was Weston food. So I ordered some spag bol, and it had some toast on it. Much like the roller coaster in the park, just an incongruous item. And I just found this so funny. These two fucking golden triangular slices adorning the top of it like it was basil. You know what I mean? And they were getting offended. It's like, oh, why are you laughing? And I was like, trust me, I'm a comedic genius. This is funny. Because, there's a story behind this. So someone's told them at some point, oh yeah, it's served with toast, by the way. You know what I mean? Like, and, she was unamused. Anyway, the night went on. She ended up teaching me some new Chinese words. Then at around 2 a.m, took her back to my mum's apartment and just smashed her on the couch, doggy style, draining me of the remainder of my chi. This little chihuahua.
What I need.
And this was a wondrous discovery, because it was like, oh, I can just do this with normal civilian women. This is a blessing to find on. Otherwise my helmet would have ended up looking like Ivan Ooze. So I could have just done this the whole time, actually, but I just never knew. So now I'm thinking, I fucking love China. And Yuki says to me that she's going to go back to university soon, but that she's going to come back in the summer, and that I should too. She says that everyone returns home from university in the summer. It's way better in the summer. She says, she says she's going to wait for me, and that she won't be with anyone else. You know what I mean? And when I was left with this, I said, Yuki, I have no fucking clue how I'm going to do it, but I am an Englishman, and I'm true to my word. I promise you I will find a way to see you again, and I shall return in the summer.
The jelly junkie, he grins like a monkey, because his spunky funkiness will never cease. But the cynic, he's a killer cute winner. But I don't care what you say, I'm finding my way to peace.
I'm a very cynical and angry man at times, so I thought I should just have a section for any tangents I want to spew out, some pet peeves perhaps. I'm pretty sure they'll have nothing to do with the episode at hand, but fuck it, what are you going to do? So I just want to tell a little story. This is a few years ago when I was an impoverished poet with a pay-as-you-go phone, as opposed to now where I'm an impoverished poet with a contract on the cusp of becoming a thousander. And I thought I had over £10 on my card, but I wasn't sure, and I needed to put £10 of credit on my phone. So I just made the assumption that if I didn't have enough money in my account, my bank would just say, listen, honky, y'all don't have enough funds, and would just prevent the transaction. So I gave it a go, and it was kosher, nothing was stopped, and I just forgot all about it. And I should say I had a little stint of homelessness at this time too, so I didn't have access to any bank statements or anything. Then a couple of months passed by, and I got access to my emails, and I saw one that said, urgent, you owe us £75. If you don't pay by like whatever date it was, it's going to be 150. So I thought, what the fuck? Like, you know, I just called my bank to see what it was all about, and the woman on the other end said, "Yeah, well, you made a transaction a few months back here. It says it was £10, but unfortunately, you only had £8 in your account, so you were minus £2, and so now you owe us £75, and if you don't pay it by tomorrow, it's going to be 150." And I said, "Bitch, are you a Freemason? Does your superior go by the name of Astaroth? Is your branch located in Pandemonium? Because let me tell you something, I'm not paying you a fucking penny." And I can already tell there's going to be some fucking fanny listening to this right now.
Well, Pab, you know, did you read the small print in the contract? Pretty sure it must have agreed regular procedure.
No. My mum made the account when I was about 14, and I had no fucking clue this was even a thing until this happened to me. I swear there are some people that view bankers as royalty, untouchable and above the law, so there's no point in challenging them. But in reality, they're just a bunch of lizards, and you know, you're severely cuckolded.
Well, they're a private business, and private businesses can do what they like. If you don't like it, why don't you just start your own bank? Satan, give me your cock.
You know, do you ever hear one of those big-brained polymaths? Fuck me. Anyway, what I want to ask is, the whole point of this is, how the fuck is this not illegal? Like, imagine if I started a business today and one of the core practices of that business was, hey, we're going to charge money to the poorest members of society with interest. So if they don't pay back the money we know they don't have, we're going to charge interest, ultimately getting more money from them than we ever gave in the first place. If this was my proposal, would you or would you not think I'm a massive cunt? That's what this really comes down to. Is that a morally right thing to do? No. No, obviously not. Then you've got to think of the implications that has for society as a whole. How many crimes are committed by people who are in debt? I'm willing to say it's thousands of people every year that are in debt and need to get out of it, and so resort to crime. So why the fuck are we allowing debt to even be a thing? You know, who benefits from that? A handful of people. This is going after the poorest people in society. And if you have no money, there's a good chance you're not very good at making money. You know what I mean? There might be a handful of people of like examples throughout history where someone's lent money and done something great with it, but generally that's not the case. Generally, if you have no money, you're not good at making money. You know, I think it actually kills your economic libido completely too, by the way. Because if your account stopped at zero and never went beyond, there would be an impetus to make money as you just have no other choice. Whereas now, if you have no money, you can always get a loan or take out an overdraft or whatever. So you don't really see the reality of your situation. You know, you just get into another relationship of dependency rather than forcing yourself to become financially independent. You know, this is usury. This is money lending and usury. And another thing that should make you question is like the kind of so-called left-wing people, the middle class people who always claim to be working class, and are like, I'm just here to fight the bourgeoisie, those types, the working class representatives, to eat the rich people, which just means tax the millionaires, not the billionaires. like what it should make you think is, why don't like Labour or any of these people just say we want to make usury illegal outright? This goes after the poorest members of society for the benefit of the rich. And I'll tell you why. Firstly, because they're bullshitters, obviously. The second reason is that both political parties in this country are globalists. And globalists are just the pawns of plutocrats. And the plutocrats are the usurers themselves. So that's why they don't say a word about usury. You know, but you want a real working class perspective, this is it. This is the real perspective. You have to be against usury and money lending, and you know, they're full of shit, so none of them are. Yeah, it just has to be illegal. Even on a national level, by the way, this should be illegal. Like, think of all of the shitty things a country does in the name of money when it's in debt. You know, it has to dumb down the populace in order to have like a kind of brain dead consumerism, because it needs X amount of consumers just to pay back the debt. You know, just in menial and purposeless jobs, because everyone has to, you know, have to pay back some of the debt. You know, they've destroyed industries. You know, just outsourced them around the world. Formerly thriving industries in this country just demolished in the name of like fighting debt. Introduced taxes, never existed. This is how it kind of works for introducing taxes, is that they'll just have a war, and then we're in debt, and now we pay taxes, and they don't go away. But once a government introduces something, they find it hard to relinquish that power. So there's a lot of taxes that were supposed to be temporary that we still pay to this day. You know, and it all just came from this. It's all about... Because, you know, when you have, like, a so-called democracy, and people, both political parties, like, have a plan for the country, whatever they forecast for it, they include the taxes that are paid in their budget. You know what I mean? They don't go like, oh, okay, well, we're going to get rid of this tax and this tax and this tax. All politics is just who's going to foot the bill of what taxes. You know what I mean? Some might say, okay, it was going to be the richer people. Some people say it would be the majority of people. But it's like none of them are saying, hey, let's just try and get to a point where we eradicate them. And I don't think we can get to a point where we can eradicate all of them. But that should be the goal for some of them. You know, because that's that's led to just unjust taxes. Immigration. You know, we were talking about immigration before. Some people say they want like a points-based immigration system, which again is just completely based upon the economy. It's like, it's not okay, like, how funny is the immigrant? How intelligent are they? How creative are they? How willing are they going? Like, what's the likelihood of them to assimilate? How much do they respect our culture? You know, that's not the criteria. Just how much money. And on the flip side of that, you know, when you have you know, so-called refugees that don't speak a word of English, what the fuck's that about? You know, that's money too. That's just corruption. Because you know, from like the plutocrat level, why they do that is to try to you know, prevent mass civil disobedience. Because if everyone talks to the neighbours and say, hey, we're doing this, pass it on, we're doing this, pass it on, then there can be a level of like disobedience. Whereas if your neighbour doesn't speak English, you can't speak to your neighbour. You know, a globalist wants to avoid hegemony at all costs. You know, that's their plan. But on like the monetary level, they're getting paid money to like to be in that situation. You know what I mean? Like that's what it comes down to. And even advertising, like they make advertising like, which is lies and manipulation. That's what it is. A sin. Lying is a sin, and they make that like they try and tell you that's like the bedrock of our entire country, of our entire civilization is you know, the economy. which just run through these lies and manipulation in advertising. Have you ever seen a fucking like watch TV with a dumb person before? But it's like there'll be an advert of like a burger, and they'll be like, I feel like a Mackey's me now, like see Brad Pitt in a watch. Oh yeah, I want that, and then people will look at me and go, hey, look, it's a person. Lad, you should have seen it. I was walking down the street the other day, like thousands of birds just chased me to take my clothes off. There's this new Lynx. It's like, yeah, why don't you, fucking jump out a window? I heard Red Bull gives you wings. Just fucking insanity. And the thing is, with lies and manipulation, if you look at every single like fictional story and every single like mythological story, every single religious story, the character that lies and manipulates is never on the side of good. It's always this fucking like slithering, slippy little mofo. You know what I mean? This conniving bitch that is always lying and manipulating, and that's what it is. You know what I mean? This is the forces of evil are behind this. You know what I mean? This is not like a good thing. And by the way, they're going to bring back slavery with this too. That's another thing I see. Don't know if you've ever seen Squid Game before. But you're gonna find yourself in a jumpsuit playing a game of fucking What's the Time, Mr. Wolf, with a Kalashnikov, a fucking exploding dog collar around your neck, while a Russian oligarch and a homosexual in a sequined ox mask place their bets from above. All because your mum owed £1,000 to Jacob the Rothschild. Fucking nightmarish. It benefits no one on a personal or national level. You know what I mean? So why don't we just call it quits? And the thing is, I actually said to the woman as well, she did put it to 0. You know what I mean? So if this ever does happen, you can just go fucking, just start shouting at them, accusing her of being a Freemason, and they'll go, oh, okay, well, I'm sorry, I'll put it to 0. And then I said to her, hey, can you make it so it never goes beyond 0? Because I don't ever want it to, so can you just do that for me? And I swear down, this is what she said. She said, oh, sorry, we don't have the technology to be able to do that. Fucking balderdash. And I never trusted banks at all after this point. Like, give me cash, I'm done with them. Give me cash, give me a bullion. You know what I mean? I don't want anything to do with fucking banks. And I know people will go like, oh well, they're it's the safest place to keep my money, even if I don't like them. But then I started to think about this when people would say it, and they're actually not the safest places. They're the places with the most security, but that's because they're under attack the most. You know what I mean? And like people like lose their entire life savings and their pensions and whatever because fucking some North Korean hackers, and people just go like, oh whoops. Can't stop them all. Just some fucking butterfingers, bank keepers just go, well, sorry about that. But if people's got their lives destroyed around them all the time, people are like, yeah, it's the safest thing. So, you might be going, okay, well, Pab, where is the safest place to keep our money? Simple. Up our asses. This is the safest, but this is the future, This is where this is where no one will think to look. Simon, why's the £10 note you gave me sticky? Fuck off that! Stop asking me difficult questions all the time. And and then another thing with this too, I don't trust about banks is and I think we're going to see this as time goes by in the next few years, is with the whole like censorship stuff, because it's all based upon fucking like, again, these like secret societies and plutocrats and everything, if you've not figured that out by now. With these like censorship things you see on like social media or like YouTube and whatever, people who have wrongthink going forward, I think that you're going to see the banks start to like cancel people's bank accounts and all this kind of stuff. I think you're going to see them start to play a much more prominent role in like silencing people and saying, oh, well, you're not allowed money and everything, because we're giving them too much power. You know what I mean? That's ultimately what it comes down to. It's too centralised and they have too much power.
Though I'm not great at introductions, while the pendulum swings slow, I will swallow my reluctance. And so, here I go, here I go, here I go, here I go, here I go. What's your name, what's your number? Together we can conquer this rock. If I put 2 fucking fingers inside of your pussy and 2 in your eyes, they call it the Spock, I would have the whole wide world safe in my hands while the rough seas tremble below. We could live long and prosper, baby, with my fucking hello. And then your eyes will say, I hope it was a greater pleasure knowing me as it will be knowing you.
And so we have reached the part of the podcast where we now discover the madness of the masses. And if you ever want to contribute to this part of the podcast, you may send in your questions and your pictures and videos and whatever else you have to pabulum@gmail.com. Of course, follow me across social media at Pab the Crab. Our first question is, what is your pronoun? Now this is a joke. This is a joke question. I know who this is. I can see. I can see who it is. It's not a serious question. I don't know what kind of an avatar we can get for this. A jester avatar tickling me. But yeah, I mean, it's a pretty vaginal thing. Pronouns, I think. Like, you only really see women put pronouns on their bios on social media, or like, you know, like women and you know, effeminate men. You don't find like a heterosexual man go up to another heterosexual man like, hey bro, what's your pronoun? Like, what are your pronouns, lad? Oh, you know what I mean? No one gives a fuck. But yeah, you know what I mean. But a thing with the pronoun thing though is the last couple of years people have started to call me out on saying them. I think a lot of people are starting to think I might be secretly woke. But it's just a habit. I read a few years back that it's a legitimate thing in English. You can call someone who is, you know, he or she is an individual, them, and it's just always happened. It's not a big deal. But I'm starting to lose confidence in that because I've had maybe like 3 people in the last couple of years like say, why are you saying them? It's just like, but they're doing out of habit. So perhaps with the podcast, along with all of the other flaws in my speech, the and ahhing and saying like all the time and all the rest of it, which I have to make a conscious effort to try to cut out with the pod. Perhaps I will also stop saying them instead of like he or him and stuff, unintentionally. But yeah, I mean, it's an interesting thing, the pronoun stuff, because it's like, yeah, I mean, it could be like somewhat of a kind of a psyop overall, but I was trying to think of how it like to try to justify its origins. Like, I think it kind of makes sense if you're like a trans person and you want to be identified as a particular thing, and there's a possibility that you may not be identified as that, but it's almost like you know, a woman goes, it's it's not really that much of an issue. I've never seen a woman and not known it's a woman. You know what I mean? So why would I give a shit about what your pronouns are? I'll guess it right 100% of the time. I don't need to know. And it's and and it's sort of the most boring aspect of someone's personality. Like it's like the most boring question on a questionnaire, for example. One of the least significant things about you. So yeah, I don't have any like almost understanding of why it's done and why people care. I think it's ultimately at this point a matter of conformity to like whatever clique they're in, that I've normalized it. But yeah, I personally don't I don't do it myself. At least I don't have any like super close friends, but I do have people on social media who use pronouns, and they're like cool people. They're actually not bad, which is I think worth pointing out, because it can also just be like a red flag in and of itself nowadays. I mean, someone's gonna like be outraged by something I say, and try and get me cancelled. There's a huge chance they're gonna have pronouns in the bio, but yeah, so a lot of kind of just gone along with it, and it's mostly women, I think, because they suffer from chronic FOMO, is what I would say. They just go along in this fashion trend, like saying, oh, well, all my friends do, so I just do it, but I don't, put much thought into why I do it. And for a lot of them, I imagine it's not that big of a deal. But also, I know a lot of women now who despise pronouns, even more than, any man I know. Because they're men, it's not like, at least heterosexual men, it's unheard of. We don't put fucking pronouns in a bio. But now there's a lot of women who are vehemently against it. Like, they won't even talk to people who put the pronouns in the bio, and saying that's why it can appear as a red flag. So, but I know a lot of people on social media who have it. I've never asked them like why they do it and why they think it's important. I can make the assumption. I think it's just conformity. Like it's just the modern thing. They just go along with the new fashionable trend. But if you disagree and you're someone with pronouns in your bio and you think there's a reason that I've not thought of, do enlighten us. I'm but by no means the pronouns expert. Anyway, let's move to the next one. Yes, king. Yes, we got a king. We got a king, and you shall welcome to my kingdom. You shall be rewarded greatly. Good night. Yes, king. I've been to China once, and it felt so high tech. I felt like a caveman. So this one is not a question, just a statement. And I did say, just let me know anything that you want, and I'll riff with it. China is pretty high tech. Now you mentioned it, because it's kind of a place where I feel like they experiment with things in China that will kind of come here maybe 10 years later. I've experienced this with QR codes. When I was in China, people would pay for things with a QR code, which at the time in my country was unheard of, and now that's starting to become more common, that people will pay with QR codes. I remember sitting on a bus, and all of the bus seats had like screens on the back of them, and it shows like adverts. Well, it shows TV, but there was an advert on it, and it was like a pregnant woman eating a pill. It was an animation, and the whole gist of the advert was like, "Oh, this pill's gonna make your fetus like super strong," And I remember looking at that like, leave the kids alone. We've been fine for a million odd years. We're gonna be fine without that. I'm sure it's completely unnecessary. So, it may be technologically advanced, but that's not necessarily a good thing, There's other technological advancements. They have, like, vaccine passports and social credit score systems, which we can, say straight away, you don't want that coming, but they're being, tested over there also right now, it seems. I do apologise. I just had to pause the podcast because... My gay cat jumped on my laptop and tried to sabotage it. I don't think he's too impressed with my stance on pronouns, but he's currently curled up alongside my penis. Hopefully that appeases him for a while. Where were we? Hey Sugar Plum. We have a Sugar Plum. I have no idea what the avatar is going to be for that, but thank you. Hey Sugar Plum. What are your thoughts on Elon taking over Twitter? I said this from day one. He's not anyone's saviour. Do not fucking delude yourself. The guy called his kid like a barcode, like fucking free CPO or whatever, and I don't think his motives for taking it over are correct. He strikes me as somewhat of a kind of a hipster narcissist type of guy, and I think even when I heard it in the past about Neuralink, because he started saying, hey everyone, like AI is going to destroy the world, well, you better put this chip in your brain. It's like, what? That fucking demonic shit. So I've always been skeptical of him, but it was kind of set in stone over the past couple of weeks with the continual bannings of accounts, the saying he's not going to bring back people he should bring back, and he said even within the first week, like, oh, freedom of speech is not freedom of reach, which is a motto that's used by the ADL. The ADL are an anti-Jewish organisation, and they've done more harm to the reputation of Jewish people than any neo-Nazi ever could. Disastrous organisation, and this what it, and it's just such a dystopian sentence. Freedom of speech is not freedom of reach. It's like, hey, yeah, you can say whatever you want to say, but we're just going to put a muzzle on your mouth and earplugs in everyone, but you can still say it. You say, well, we love freedom of speech, but just no one's going to hear anything you say. It's completely dystopian. The ADL should have no seat at the table whatsoever. Anyone who's remotely serious about freedom of speech understands just how fucking nonsensical that very fucking notion is. I can try and have some sympathy and go, well, some like appeasement of advertisers or whatever. But it's like, again, that's kind of It's like that's a battle he doesn't seem willing to like truly win. You know what I mean? He would care more about advertisers and reputation and whatever else over actual freedom of speech people. So what he is, he's kind of pro less censorship, but he's not pro free speech. And it's just delusional if anyone thought any different. When you see the kind of people. Like, imagine someone being impressed with what's happened so far. Oh, thank you, Elon. Thanks for bringing back Cobra. Well, thanks, Cobra. It's going to tell me to go to the gym. Oh, Elon, you brought back Jordan Peterson. I can clean my room. It's like, I could cry about Israel and clean my room. Like, it's like... it's a natural conclusion, those kind of figures in society too, of just fatherlessness. It's like, oh, I'm going to tell you to clean your room and exercise. Like, yeah. But you know what I mean? That's not like a great win when you think of everything else that, who could be on the platform and aren't. And it's the thing too with those kind of like alternative celebrity things. Like, I say this because I've noticed it on Twitter. It's like, I'm not impressed by anyone, and it's all of these kind of things that the algorithms are pushed towards. It's like, oh, that's the intellectuals. It's like, is it? You know what I mean? Is it really? And you'll say, like, not interested 1,000 times, and they just keep being recommended, you know what I mean? These people, they just keep being recommended, and and they all keep bringing up points I've noticed on Twitter. So it may well be like an agenda here to muddy the waters of free speech, because I said this last week, like that might be the ultimate goal, to muddy the waters of free speech. And yeah, I kind of see that, because I see a lot of these like blue tick posts. And the blue tick thing shouldn't really even matter anymore. And obviously, saying like it's going to be a lot more of like a democratic thing. Like you'll have like anyone can be a part of it. But in my feed, it's still not the case. It's just, it's kind of the most popular alt channels and like right wing political figures or whatever, and it's like they keep bringing up things about freedom of speech that are not even related to freedom of speech. You know what I mean? Like, oh, to all the free speech absolutists, what do you have to say about child pornography? You know what I mean? It's like, what the fuck are you talking about? And you see this all the time, like, and I don't know what it is with our society, because perhaps it comes from the vacuous celebrity culture we've all been exposed to for the last few decades, where it's, like Paris Hilton and Kim Kardashian and like fucking Big Brother contestants, and that kind of like people are being told to glorify retards. That any alternative to that like seems like a win also, but it's like, I think people are just like worshipping midwit to this. But like I say, I don't want to seem like too much of a cynic. But it's like, if you told me that these people who keep getting pushed, it's like, what have they done? You know what I mean? What's the statue of their great deeds going to be? Look, oh, they motivated men. It's like, okay, and then what else? What else did they do? What was their fantastic achievement? Nothing. You know what I mean? And it's like, then you keep seeing these things being pushed, people thinking it's a win. Oh, what does Zuby have to say about freedom of speech? And they just say like fucking like 10 different things. I'm not impressed by anyone, I gotta say, but push like 10 different things that are not freedom of speech. Freedom of speech, just to clarify, is an individual right. And it's what you can say out of your voice box as an individual civilian that will not lead to your imprisonment for saying those things. Anything else someone's trying to attach to that, it's something else. You know what I mean? They're trying to muddy the water, and you see this all the time, and they'll do it with freedom of press. And freedom of press, it's, because you can see the relationship to them, and there's a lot of other caveats, so-called. They're not caveats, they're just a different thing altogether. You can be like libel or harassment or whatever, and also a lot of the time it just relates to mentally ill people in society. That's the real problem at hand. But like, it's not the same thing, and you can go into all of those things, and we will have, we can have several episodes on free speech as a whole, so I won't get fully into all of those things, although a lot of the time the principle's still basically the same. But the whole point of it is that it's a safeguard against tyranny. So if you defend freedom of speech absolutely, and someone goes, oh, well, if like the Nazis speak, or like racists speak, it's like, what will happen is if you say, well, okay, it's fine for everyone to speak, but not Nazis and racists. The tyrants of the world, the psychology of a tyrant is that if you give them an inch, they will take a mile. And that's what you see. They just go, oh, okay, yeah, everyone can speak, except you think it's okay, we censor Nazis and racists, right? Okay, we'll just change the definition of those words. And that's exactly what's happened. And so whoever they will choose to censor, based on who they see as a threat to their power, whatever the thing you said is now, oh, that's acceptable to censor, you will just become that. They will just change the definition of those words so that they can censor more people. And once those people have been censored, they have no recourse for defense, because no one wants to associate themselves with those things. No one wants to go like, oh, I'm going to defend a racist, I'm going to defend a Nazi, because then by association, well, it's what they're banking on, is that by association you'll go, oh, you can't defend those things, and that's what it kind of ultimately comes down to. It reminds me of like maybe like 2015, 2016 with Trump, when the first wave of real censorship came. I saw this. I saw it with a guy called Gavin McInnes. And he's someone like the ADL, for example, say he's like a neo-Nazi, which they also say like PewDiePie is a neo-Nazi. So again, they can go fuck themselves. But it's like it was like he's basically like a pro-Trump guy. I don't agree with everything he said, but I think he's got some funny things. In fact, he has like a double act with Ryan Katsu Rivera, and more people should be aware of it. Because, he's a special talent, I think they're hilarious. But, he's got a lot of bad takes, so he's not to screw, but it's fucking, what even relevance does that have? You know what I mean? It's not even important. But anyway, he's someone who was kind of influential to Trump being elected, for example. So then what you have are like... left-wing people in America, the Democrats, and I'm not even political. I'm not even trying to sway anyone's political opinions. I'm just about to tell you why, the floodgates will not be opened completely. Why it will never be absolute freedom of speech through Elon Musk. So, like, the Democrats in America see someone like Gavin McInnes would be influential in helping the Republicans come into power. So they would tarnish him as being a Nazi and a racist. And then people go, oh, okay, well, it's okay to censor that person. And he's not those things. Like, I was watching him at the time, I'm from a completely different country, got no horse in the race. I can just tell you, I watched his content. Absolutely not those things. And then, this is the kind of point why they don't want the floodgates open, is that if you were to open the floodgates and say, absolute amnesty for 100% of people across the internet, what you would see is the real racists and Nazis would come about, and then you'd have someone who's been censored and accused of being a racist and a Nazi, like Gavin McInnes, well, thousands of others, then the fight against those people. That's what you would see. You would see there'd be a very clear difference between the people they've been telling you are Nazis, between the people who've been they're telling you are Nazis and telling you are racist, and real racists, real Nazis, real anti-Semites. You would start to see the difference between those things. So basically, the leading party in America would lose the influence, the ability to censor their opponents. Because that's what's been happening. But don't think it's even just like the left wing of America that's against it, because even the conservative establishment, the Republican Party, they don't want the floodgates being opened. And like I said on Twitter, what I see is right-wing blue tick people going like, oh, well, I used to be pro-freedom until Kanye said Netanyahu, which is fucking hilarious. But you know what I mean? It's like, oh, until that, now I'm not so sure. Look, I think a lot of it, you know what I mean? It's like, they might just be stupid people, but it's like, yeah, they don't understand freedom of speech, and it seems a lot of it's shilling. And I say the reason for that is like, there are elements, and like say, like take Nick Fuentes, America First, and all that kind of stuff. It's like one of the stances, for example, would be that they are, and they're all censored, just for context. One of their stances, for example, would be that they're not pro-Israel, they're against Israel, and they are not pro like LGBT stuff. And in the the Republican acceptable channels, like the Ben Shapiro's, etc., it's like they have a pretty comfy monopoly on the policies of the right in America. So again, they also have nothing to gain by, they would see it as like, why would we introduce like a fracture within our own Republican side of things? You know what I mean? People really start to ask questions, change that, and maybe it wouldn't happen. Also, maybe be enough Republicans who would go like, oh well, we like Israel, and we, what I mean. I'm not telling someone what it is and what my opinion is on any of it. I'm just saying, like, that's the situation. That's why they won't open the floodgates. It comes down to American politics. The left of America have censored people they shouldn't have, and it's going to be exposed if you open the floodgates that it was all nonsense. And likewise, you know, a lot of the people who have power, the kind of what do they call them? Rhinos, Republican in name only. These kind of, you know, politicians in the positions of power would start to, you know, be challenged much deeper if the floodgates were let open. So they don't want either of those things, you know, to occur. And not only that, we're especially, you know, with the right and the further right people, it's like they don't want any middle ground to be found. No tyrant ever wants middle ground to be found. They don't want any nuance. They don't want any kind of like a debate with someone who's like, you know, is considered to be extreme. And then anyone to go like, oh, well, at least I disagree with most of your shit, but that 2% you said that, I kind of agree with that. You know, I don't like plutocrats' influence. I don't like, you know, whatever it could be. They don't want to see any ground. You know, ultimately the fear of freedom of speech stems from the fear of freedom of thought, and freedom of speech is therefore ultimately anti-establishment. So the entire establishment, bipartisan politics, is against freedom of speech. And so I see that on Twitter now. I see, you know, it isn't just left-wing people that are censoring. It's right-wing people that are shilling for it, and they don't want it to happen. And so yeah, and that's why some people think the whole thing's a psyop at the minute, because I mean, the whole thing is just very suspicious around like in Kanye West and Alex Jones. That like, yeah, I mean, I'm not even gonna go deep, but a lot of people think it's just like, it's that people, because I've seen these tweets like with like, oh, before you know, that happened, I used to be really pro, but now I understand, and they're kind of changing. And a lot of people think like, oh, this is the whole point of the takeover, where they go like, oh, okay, it's acceptable to censor some people, which is not pro freedom of speech. It just means you're pro less censorship, and that's basically the stance of Elon Musk. My stance is I'm pro free speech because I understand, you know, the significance. I understand that you still open the door for tyranny. You still, once you allow that censorship still, and you understand that, you know, these people are the biggest liars on the planet, don't be surprised when at some point the truth is censored, because you've just said, hey, you have the ability to censor. You know, you can't give them that, because they will always abuse that thing. You know, going back to the the American Constitution, like the founding fathers would fucking adore me. You know what I mean? We're on the same wavelength. It's just you know, a lot of people have lost track of that. And but saying that, you know what I mean? Oh, and with the psyop thing, sorry, I almost didn't say. I would like to make a point that I think Milo Yiannopoulos may well be like the Aleister Crowley of our century. You know, I've got no evidence for this, but I'm just saying, you know, there could be like a dark art handler / like, you know, double agent thing going on. There's a lot of like fishiness around all of that whole situation that's going right now. But yeah, I mean, but it's still better than it was before. It's still like Twitter's still better than what it would have been in the past. You know, like especially if there's like a lockdown or whatever. Like I prefer to be there. You think about being in like the belly of the beast. We're in the belly of the beast right now on like YouTube. I mean, that's still like the you know, like in cahoots with the ADL also, and you know, fully like with the censorious like liars that are, you know, all in the same, you know, same kind of meddlings of the left wing politics. So it's like I've we're in the belly of the beast now, so it may well be that eventually we will just go to Twitter full time. Because I'll be fine on Twitter. As I said before, it's like I don't really say any. I'm not a nefarious person, you know what I mean? I don't have any particular agenda. I don't have any political affiliation. Like, say, if you're left wing, you're right wing, believe whatever you want to believe. I don't give a fuck. You know what I mean? I really don't. But it's like I just understand freedom of speech. It's like almost nobody does. It's quite incredible. It's when I say no one does, it's like this. Everyone I know does. I know it, but then it's like that's what I'm saying. It's very suspicious on Twitter right now because it seems like all of these blue tick people, and now they're not left wing people, now they're right wing people, keep shilling, keep muddying the waters. It's it's something to look out for. Hello, King Queen here. Ooh, hey Queen. Is China safe? Well, as I said before, it's yeah. I mean, if you're not getting your organs harvested, pretty safe. No, but I mean, it's good at a kind of being safe in ways that the Western world isn't. Like, you can't go to many places at night time in my city and it'd be completely safe. We have like gangs of kids waiting on corners and they'll like jump people. That kind of shit is like, I've never seen stuff like that in China, but they might have like, organised crime, a lot of prostitution, a lot of, as you're saying, trafficking, organ harvesting stuff. But but I'm not Xi Jinping, you know what I mean? I can't speak on behalf of all of the country, but I think, like I say, people do shopping at midnight. The streets seem very safe at times, but it's just, there's crime in every country, you know what I mean? King, I have a question about you. When did you first fall in love with poetry? How old were you? And how did it happen? I'm interested to know what poets influenced you. Well, when I was 16, I decided I was going to be a musician. So I started songwriting. You could say I have somewhat of an influence, perhaps, of songwriters that kind of, would have lit the spark. Would have been like Alex Turner and Bob Dylan, Ray Davies, John Lennon, Morrissey, Pete Doherty, maybe, Noel Gallagher. Maybe those people like, have some minute influence over me still. And anyway, I was just writing songs, and the thing is with that is like, if you're dependent on 3 other drug addicts to kind of, get your work out, it can become frustrating. They're not very reliable, at least in my case. So it wasn't really happening, and I just thought, I'm writing the fucking songs anyway, I might as well just write a poetry book, because people going off to university, this kind of stuff. So I thought, okay, I'll take a year and I'll just write poetry. But I thought, well, I've never read a poetry book, now's probably the time to do that. And I have a lot of books that were left as an heirloom by my great granddad to my mum, R.I.P. Cecil. And they're fascinating, these books, because some of them are from like the 1800s, from the 1920s, 30s, all the way up to like, I don't know, the 60s. And he left newspapers as bookmarks. So sometimes you'll just find like a random newspaper from like the 20s, and he annotated all of the poems, but actually his handwriting's too neat for me to be able to comprehend, which is the opposite of my mind. Handwriting is a bit spazzy, but like, I can't actually read them, but it's still interesting. You just see the massive amount of notes and like what kind of piqued his interest in each poem. It's interesting. So I was reading these books, started with the 20th century poets. I mean, I read like Sylvia Plath and T.S. Eliot and W.H. Auden and Robert Frost and Ted Hughes and Dylan Thomas and George Barker and I mean, really name any 20th century poet, and I was reading, but nothing really clicked at that time. It wasn't until, you know what, I'll give you my Mount Rushmore of English poets as we go along, and I'll tell you about this. The first one that really hit me in a way that no other did was Shakespeare. When I read Shakespeare's sonnets, I started to notice with the final couplet, like my heart skipped a beat. It really, you know, affected me for a second. I was like, oh, whoa, that was like the first time I had a real connection to the to a poem in that way. And so then I started like studying it real like meticulously, and I started to notice the patterns, like say like the Volta, which I never knew the word at the time was a Volta. I never understood the poetics, but I could see the patterns from poem to poem, and I just started to really study that. So that was the first major influence. But then I think it was when I read a poet. He's not in my Mount Rushmore of poets, but I read a book by Siegfried Sassoon, who's known as kind of a World War One poet. So he's most famous for, but actually his poems after the war are I mean, they're kind of incredibly underrated, I think. And this book, Sequences, is maybe 1958, I want to say, from memory. And like, I think, it was a real turning point for me, because up until that point, I was reading, obviously like those modern poets and Shakespeare, but the things I was writing was just like, okay, well, I saw the modern ones were kind of more about writing whatever's trivial and mundane. So I was writing anything that was trivial and mundane. I was imitating love poems, because I thought, like, well, that's what a poem is, even, and it was entirely fictionalized. And then there was like inside jokes for poems, because I was still insecure as I started writing. It was kind of just to make my mates laugh, because it would be like about someone they knew. And then and like I was also aware of like John Cooper Clarke, but I mean, don't press me to like place John Cooper Clarke in the in the canon, because it's not going to end well. It's going to come off as somewhat of a diss, but it's like, you know, I am a fan, but I just consider him more of a comedian, and you know, I think he's great at wordplay, but yeah, again, not like a major influence in the same way as these. And anyway, I was reading Siegfried Sassoon, and then I just realized, like, oh, you're allowed to be philosophical, because he started, philosophizing on the nature of consciousness, or just anything really, just any like random thought, and that opened up a whole new world to me, where I thought, oh, it can be about anything. It can really be about any topic, and I can philosophize on any kind of random little theory I have on something. It's like I can throw that into a line or two. Like it really, really opened the doors for me. So that was a major turning point. And what happened, I think, in that book is I want to say maybe he recommends Thomas Hardy, who I got onto, because this is the thing poets do, is they'll reference other poets that they appreciate and respect, and they kind of like pass the baton on. So throughout the centuries, then, you know, anyone who's into their work will, you know, find whoever influenced them. I think that's why poets have a great amount of longevity compared to other art forms. This kind of passing of the baton, this courtesy, and yeah, I think he recommended Thomas Hardy, and from Thomas Hardy he did the same thing and recommended Shelley. And now Shelley was probably the profoundest of all of them, I think, just for the time that I read it, because up till that point I kind of began with a level of I don't know, arrogance or ignorance. I guess arrogance and ignorance go hand in hand, but you know, like, because as I said, there wasn't a living poet on the planet that inspired me to become a poet, so I just kind of felt from day one I was the best on the planet already. You know what I mean? Like, the second I picked up a pen, I was already the best in the world at it. So, which, I don't think it's true, but that is what I felt, you know, because why wouldn't I? And then this was a turn point where, like, I really was like, oh fuck, I have to be humble and I have to study everything this man's doing, because sometimes when you recommend poetry to people, you recommend a particular poem that you like want them to see or something. I don't do that with Shelley. Just read anything this man has written, and it's a work of genius. That's the thing. There's a very clear thing that stands out to you. It's just a work of genius. Is you're looking at a genius's mind, and it has everything in there. You know what I mean? And it's like Shakespeare would have that kind of thing I talked about, where it makes your heart skip a beat. I think Shelley has that, but it's kind of well, you know, I think people could perhaps say this with Shakespeare too. But there's an idea of like Dionysian and Apollonian poetry, and I think that, you know, they're kind of the ultimate blend of those things. And with Shelley, it's like he's on the edge of chaos always, but he manages to keep it just about in the form. You know what I mean? And then, you know, you read about his life, and then, you know, I'm just like, this guy's me. Why has no one recommended I become a romantic poet? I mean, you know, all these fucking like sexcapades, the fucking gallivanting around the world, the nature, the philosophy. Like, I'm like, yeah, this is my guy waxing lyrical about nature all day. Like, why have I never heard this guy? Like, it's as much a crime, like, for the British people that they don't know a lot about Shelley, that everyone doesn't know the name of Shelley, as it would be like the Greeks not knowing the name of Homer. You know what I mean? It's such a perverse tragedy. Again, I regard him that highly. I think he's that important of a poet. I think that he, you know, yeah, I mean, it's just mind blowing. I had to yeah, I was really humbled by it at that point, and then from him I got on to Byron, another absolute mad lad. This, you know, they're both mad lads. You know, but then he's kind of you know, as another romantic, but he's like hilarious, you know. And then through him and his recommendations, got me onto Dryden, got me onto Pope. Just wit permeates all his work, all his verses, and just like the balls on those guys also. Like, you know, Byron, the poems like Calling Out the Rothschilds, fucking Shelley, and that's the other thing too, with like Shelley's essays, and in regards to freedom of speech, like, people talk about freedom of speech now, but I think in general, even poetry, people who don't read poetry have put a cap on their intelligence. That's what I've noticed, because everyone always thinks like they're the first person to like do something, but it's like, it's actually just ignorant. Because then you look at people in the past, and you look at the romantics, and even go to, like, you know, the Enlightenment thinkers also, like Voltaire and things. It's like, you're not really saying anything. You're an absolute eunuch. You know what I mean? People think they're saying like something edgy, and just like, you're not really saying anything that important. And that's the thing with when you read like the essays of Shelley, because, you know, like he has like an essay on the debt, on like national debt also, you know. But you see that stuff, and you're like, hey, why are these people all braver than me? You know what I mean? Why are they all braver than me and anyone I know? You know what I mean? So you want like a good role model. You want to clean your bedroom. It's like, I think yeah, Shelley and Byron are very very good. It would be very good role models in this day and age. And And then the last one for the Mount Rushmore of mine was John Donne. Now, John Donne, I'd actually discovered earlier by the time it was like I was reading Shakespeare, but I wasn't that impressed by him, and the kind of people he's influenced have kind of misinterpreted him and reduced a lot of dog shit poetry as a result. They would say things like, "Oh, he like doesn't care about like punctuation or something," and then that whole disaster. And yeah, I mean, I say the reason I wasn't that enamored with him to begin with is because I was kind of more focused on the emotional side of poetry, the passionate side of poetry. And I looked at John Donne, I thought, yeah, it's very intellectual, but I wasn't blown away by it. But it was only when I come back after I'd read the Romantics, I think, that I looked at his work and not only saw like the real like mastery over the traditional forms. There's a good poem you could read called Debate, and that kind of blows out the water, that whole idea of like, oh, he doesn't respect traditional forms or something, because it's like, well, if you see him write it, it's like he's very clearly capable of that. And like he also shares a birthday with Byron too, actually, I think, John Donne. Anyway, like he's why I love him is he just has such perspicacity in the images that he presents. So if he has like an allegory he puts forth, he like meticulously knows each part of that allegory, which is something I've never seen anyone else do. To the degree where he goes on for pages and pages and pages on just the allegory and keeps it going. Like that requires such a level of planning and foresight and genius to be able to actually execute it as John Donne did execute it. And also, it's like he's writing with a confidence that I think all poets should have, that he's kind of writing for a future age, and it's such faith in himself, his writing ability, his genius and humanity, that he's going to have a place in the canon. Because he could very easily just conform to the times that you live in and go like, oh, well, other people are doing this, so he'll change. But he didn't change. He just goes like, oh, fuck it, this is like my new shit. This is how I'm going to do. I'm going to persevere. And even if the people at the time don't appreciate me as much as, you feel they might, they perhaps should, at some point he's going to have a worth in the canon. You know what I mean? And that should be inspirational to poets. It's inspirational to me. It gives you kind of confidence. We go like, oh, maybe I'll use a word that kind of is a little adventurous, or you you just like because the thing is, if you kind of dumb yourself down along with the rest of society, as we've discussed before, of being heavily dumbed down, it's like you've just kind of shot yourself in the foot for any potential legacy you could have alongside the greats of the canon, because they perhaps weren't in a time where people were dumbed down, and you'll be compared to them. You're not going to be compared to the retards of your age anyway, so it's like, keep that in mind, so yeah, all those things are a great kind of, yeah, great influences. But I'm kind of influenced by everything, like that's just like the top tier Mount Rushmore. I said before with Siegfried Sassoon, that was a profound influence, but I just don't regard him as being in the top four. And even like that's my Mount Rushmore, but it also kind of depends on the time you discover poets in your life, because I mean I wouldn't argue with someone saying, oh, I think Milton would be in the Mount Rushmore over John Donne, or like, you know what I mean? Some people might like Coleridge or Pope, or and people have these kind of there are other very honourable mentions people could have alongside all of those, but those are just my like Mount Rushmore. I have other ones that are great influences, Keats and ones that people I would say are very good poets. People should read. and then other ones which like I don't think they're like great. I mean, at the minute I was reading recently, like Elizabeth Bishop, who I consider to be like a descriptive poet. That's why I thought I'd dabble, because I just wanted to try to, chisel my imperfections around such a thing, and she's descriptive in a way that a lot of other poets aren't. But if you compare the overall work to one of those four or a lot of others, you wouldn't say it's incredible. But just little elements. That's the thing, is like I can read anything and take little elements. I'll take little bits here and there. And so I'm kind of influenced by everything. I can literally read anything, any fucking shit. What am I even reading at the minute? Like, I mean, I was reading some like Greek stuff. I read reading some Goethe. Let me fucking try and get something. I might read you a poem, some Goethe. I mean, I won't pick a full one. I'll just pick like a quatrain if I want, a cheeky little quatrain. And this might be a disaster. Aug, mein Aug, wo sinkst du nieder? Goldner Traum kommt wieder. Weg, du Traum, so gold du bist. Hier auch Lieb und Leben ist. That's eyes wide downcast now, what shining? Dreams return, what past repining? Golden dream, I break your spell. Here is love and life as well. Beautiful from fucking Johann Wolfgang. So I just dabble, and that's the thing, is like I like to repost from around the world. I like to read just anything, everyone, anything I feel like I'm just a sponge that wants to absorb all of the information I possibly can, but I'd say those are the major four that are at my core, and everything else that I just kind of take day by day. So the final thing I want to show you is we actually have a video. We are popping our video cherry here on Pabulum, and the comment is just thoughts. Well, he's quite the mover, this little specimen. I think you know what, I did post this on my Insta time ago, this video, but he's the moves are pretty. I'm pretty envious of the way he moves, to be honest. Got that Jagger swagger. Looks like a Master Roshi. And then we can get a side-by-side of Master Roshi. Master Roshi giving it the beans, Yeah, he's a fucking mad lad. His pronouns are Co and Kane. But yeah, I mean, let's watch this again. But I don't know if he's Chinese, though. I don't know if that's why it was sent in, if you think he's Chinese. I don't know, he may well be. but he could just be from outer space, because I mean those movements. He's very fluid, and I mean, yeah, he is great. To be honest, this is what enlightenment looks like. I think this is the true face of enlightenment. That fucking crab movement is exactly what we really want. But keep sending the videos in. I love that. And anyway, now the time has come to say goodbye. And well, yeah, I mean, it's been one hell of an episode. I hope you've enjoyed yourself. I hope it tickled you. You know, y'all certainly have been tickling me, and yeah, I mean, I did say last week that I wanted some independent musicians to send in some songs, and we got some. However, we're not going to play them this week. But and keep sending them in. Pabulum@gmail.com. But what I want to play on this week is I was in China. And I went to like a CD shop one time, and I saw a CD, and it had like a stairway up to heaven, and just like a bald Buddha's head. And I was like, I'll fucking have that. And yeah, took it, played it. This is track 2. It's Confucius Says, with a song called Plum Blossom. Like, share, subscribe. We are the algorithm. Educate yourself, buy a fucking book, and know that the time for peace is upon us.
身后为干空手。